My name is Nomtamenye, and I work for the Raymond Mhlaba Center. Today I'm going to be co-facilitating with Dr. Timka, who is the acting director at the center. It's nice to see everyone, especially the schools. You guys look beautiful. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Today you've joined us in a post-elections debate that is titled The Struggle for a Prosperous South Africa 2024 and Beyond. And this program is hosted by the Raymond Mhlaba Center jointly with the UNDP. So it's great that we see the venue packed for a great discussion. So I want to give this program the dignity it deserves by making you welcomed by our Executive Dean of Humanities. So please help me welcome Prof. Pamela Maseko.
I've got a challenge of height, so I've got to adjust this all the time. Good afternoon, Molweni, distinguished guests. I do want to call people by name where I can, but I want to start off by acknowledging the executive of the university, who most of them are not here. I said when I joined the panelists just a few minutes ago that today has been uncharacteristically busy, but I corrected myself that we're busy every day, especially the executives. So our Vice Chancellor, our Deputy Vice Chancellors could not attend today, but they pass their good wishes for today and ask that I welcome you on their behalf. I want to acknowledge the executives from the faculty, specifically Dr. Luck. Let me acknowledge firstly, I think the center, the Raymond Mhlaba Center that is hosting this event or promoting this event on behalf of my faculty, humanities faculty. Special welcome to the organization we've partnered with today for this event, and this is the United Nations Development Program, and we've been communicating with Mr. Bongani Matomela, and we welcome that collaboration, and we are really, really grateful that you could come on board. And in the faculty, if you've joined us for one event, you must know that this is your home, and we will have you collaborating with you for any relevant event in the future. So let me acknowledge the panelists, Oyama Mabandla, Mr. Oyama Mabandla, Advocate Moses Kakana, Ms. Papano Pasha, Dr. Ntabiseng Muleko, and Mr. Jacob Marocha. This is the best panel we could have for the subject of today. As you can see, we often have great events here. They are not always this full. And so be ready to be engaged with at the end of this program. Most importantly, as been said in the introduction by the program director, our conversations often involve schools. And we are grateful once again today to have local schools. We believe that this is a learning process. We believe also you should not see the doors of the university at the end of your grade 12. We see these as a way of stimulating you to come to university, but also to see your role models in person. If you want to be any of the things that these people are, you definitely can be. So I express my deepest gratitude to you, all of you here, for choosing to attend this important discussion this afternoon. We say, Esxhoseni khululani baki, those people who are linguistically disadvantaged, take off your jackets. This is home. The strength of democracy in South Africa has been proven once again in the last elections. The country hosted a high-stakes poll. We were all biting our nails, in which the governing party was expected to lose its dominance. Yet commitment to strong democratic traditions was demonstrated across the political divide. This secures a place among stable democracies in the world, stable democracies in the world. I don't think we talk enough about that, about how we successfully manage elections even when times are challenging. We don't talk about that. Yet commitment to strong, democracies, though, are measured on much broader aspects than procedural indicators such as successful elections. So as we celebrated another peaceful, free and fair elections outcomes this year, we dare not allow complacency and indifference to get the better of us. There is work to be done. And I refer this to all of us here, including the learners from different schools. Today, South Africa demands of us, as the sons and daughters of this place, to follow the tradition of the founding fathers of democracy, particularly Raymond Mhlaba, whose name the center bears. They had ongoing discussions about the future of the country much earlier, in the mid-1930s. Maybe, let's say, at the start of the resolute a fight for liberation in the 1912s, the formation of the liberation movements. And so yet they had these discussions in the mid-1930s under the banner of Maibuya Students Association in Hilltown. You can see there were students at the time in a primary school, in a junior school in Hilltown. And so it could have been you about 100 years ago. Of course, as we know, the rest is history. They went on to wage commendable struggles for liberation that took them to prisons, exiles, and underground, and eventually to the seats of government in the country. In other words, they achieved the things they only talked about as learners in Hilltown. Likewise, our generation demands nothing less than a fair return on the investments made in our education, the freedoms we enjoy, and the positions of influence we hold. It is for this reason that we thought we should invite these distinguished guests to explore with us the mission of our generation in the political context that we find ourselves in. For our faculty, the Faculty of Humanities, and the university, we are under no illusion about our sense of place and history and the duty we have to produce scholarship that addresses the immediate tasks we have. So, as I always say in occasions like this is not a nice to have. It's not, I'm not ticking a box in my annual performance plan. These are important discussions that we need to have. So we know, however, that great individuals, organizations, or even countries are not, do not thrive when they are driven by the tyranny of the urgent and immediate. So oftentimes they rise to greatness by reflecting critically on not just the present, but also emerging futures and making key choices about the future they prefer. So kwaXhosa sithi inyathi ibuzwa kwabaphambili. I'm quoting uBaba Lwamagoqwana in the book that is about to come out from our new press, which is Nelson Mandela University Press. So inyathi ibuzwa kwabaphambili, it's recognition, the idiom is a recognition that to make progress in life, you have to inquire from those who have traveled the path before you. We have gathered here abo baphambili ababahambe ngaphambili le ndlela. And Fanon acknowledges we discover our mission out of relative obscurity. We know they have seen enough to help us navigate the uncharted waters we find ourselves. And so we find the course. In so doing, we find the course of the future we want. I plead with you to listen carefully, engage with all our speakers today, in a way that builds us as a people first, as a faculty, as a university, and as a country, so that we may all live with a good overall sense of direction that this is greater than the initial position we came with here to discuss. So we're also thrilled to share with you that this process forms part of an ongoing initiative to contribute to the ongoing process of crafting solutions for going forward to the country. And that is pertinent to us as a university that is socially engaged, that is forward-looking as well, and imagining the future, a better future for our country. And we do so in the name of Udada Raymond Mhlaba. Welcome and enjoy the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that refreshing opening, Prof. Maseko. I do echo your sentiments that it's great to see the venue packed the day before a public holiday. It makes us believe that people do still find value in these kind of conversations. So we are really happy about that. Colleagues, I want us to move along on the program. I hope everyone is following on the program. Now we're going to be moving to the person who's going to be giving us the purpose of the day, and that is Mr. Bongela Matomela, who is a representative of the UNDP. Please let's help welcome him.
Thank you, Program Director. I just want to start by extending, I think, a word of welcome and gratitude from the United Nations office in South Africa, based in Pretoria, the regional office in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and the global office in New York in the United States of America. I would really like to extend, I think, my gratitude as well to the Dean of the faculty, who was really behind this debate, to Dr. Mtimka of the center, who was behind this debate. When he reached out to me about a few weeks ago, and we started exploring possibilities of collaboration, I couldn't hesitate. Not because he's my homeboy, because we come from the same, we're all from Ngosha, but that's where our ancestral homes are. But we have worked with him on a number of initiatives as United Nations. So we really are proud, that we are collaborating with all of you on this. I think as the United Nations, we are very grateful that we are partnering with this. We welcome the debate. And we hope, I think the purpose of the debate is to open up discussions about the process that the country has undergone over the last few months. And hopefully the debate will also fit into the current processes that are underway in the country. We know that there's a process of talking about convening a national dialogue that is going to be involving all stakeholders to create a new path and to brainstorm about how South Africa should look like in the next few years. There is also a process that the Government of National Unity is now embarking on, which is the development of the medium-term strategic framework. This week, as United Nations, for instance, we had a discussion with the Ministry of Public Service Administration and with all the centers of government, including the World Bank, about helping the country develop that medium-term strategic framework, which is really based on the priorities and also on what the parties, campaigned for. So we are hoping that this process, the outcomes of this debate, will actually fit into that. It will not just be a talk shop. And I think we want to underscore, I think, the role of universities as centers of knowledge in terms of this. They need to continue to be the sounding board, for the people that are responsible for making policies, for executing the policies, and for monitoring the policies. And we take that very, very seriously. And I think perhaps it's very important to underscore actually the importance of this university. This is the legacy of Tata Madiba and also Tata Raymond Mhlaba as well. So you dare not fail, definitely. You dare not fail in terms of and that is one of the reasons why I was also quite excited to be approached to collaborate with you to do that. I want to make the point that the United Nations mandate in South Africa and indeed in the world is the mandate of the people of the country that we were in. We do not have any other mandate except the mandate of the people of South Africa and, of course, the government of South Africa as well. We understand, and I think that is the purpose of this debate, that South Africa has just entered into uncharted water. This is uncharted, a government of national unity that has been formed under very difficult circumstances, but that was the option that the country had going forward. I think I need to also underscore that there are some challenges, I think, over the years, and these are the challenges that not only face South Africa, but all the countries. The low levels of trust in public institutions is a big concern. We also saw in this election that we had a decrease in voter turnout, and I think that is very, very worrying. We have situations where the world is also very polarized. We know what's happening in the world. There are about 64 elections that would have happened at the end of this year in the world. Quite a lot of them are also going to be in Africa as well. But as we all know, the world is very polarized. There's a lack of trust in public institutions. There is even a debate and a question about the role of the UN and also the role of multilateralism, whether it's still relevant in the era, because we see conflicts, we see all kinds of problems happening in the world, and the question is, where is the United Nations, where is the multilateral system to resolve some of those things? We are seeing a situation where countries are becoming nationalistic and focusing on themselves. But a few years ago, we were talking about globalizations, but we're beginning to see countries reverting to protecting their own borders and looking at their own national interests. And how do we begin to navigate around that? And where does South Africa position basically itself in terms of that? As a country, we always talk about working towards a better Africa and a better world, and what is the role of South Africa, and given the political challenges we are basically now foreseeing. So I think it's very important that this debate really elicits some discussions around those particular issues. I think it's very important that we do that. And I think at the end of the day, it's really not about what we are saying and thinking as intellectuals, as people that are here, but it's really the extent to which some of these things are going to translate into tangible improvement in people's life. I think we must always have that at the back of our mind. And I think for the panelists that are going to be part of this thing, I think one of the issues that I think we need to grapple with, and which has been a big issue, is about how to ensure that we guard the governors, and also who really guards the guardians themselves. I think that's something that is going to be very important. We've seen political parties campaigning. Now some of them are in government, some of them are not in government. What is it that needs to happen? I want to quote the former governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, when he said, "You campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose." So, and I think we have seen that. You campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. Campaigning and governing are two different things. So the question is, how do we translate the rhetoric into actionables that will lead to people's improvement? And I hope some of those things will be part of the debate that will basically come from this discussion. As the United Nations, we commit ourselves, our mandate to strengthen public institutions, ensure good governance, and ensure that South Africa play its rightful role. South Africa continues to be a beacon of hope in Africa and also in the world, but also equally South Africa has made a lot of missteps and mistakes over the last few years, and I think that's something that we need to acknowledge. So it thinks upon all of us to have a discussions, to brainstorm about these issues, and to chart a way forward. And hopefully we hope that the discussions will basically elicit that. So I think, as the Chinese say, let the 100 flowers blossom, and 100 schools of thought content. So we're hoping that this discussion is going to elicit a lot of debate and discussions, and we wish everybody very well, and we really commit ourselves to supporting the university and the center beyond the debate, to ensure that what comes out of this fits into the national process, so that we can see situations where things improve for the better in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that in-depth and informative purpose of the day, Mr. Bongani Matomela. I do want to just acknowledge our virtual presence. We are on YouTube. So I do want to acknowledge them and greet them on YouTube as well. Good people, we have now reached the crux of the conversation and the day. I'm going to be calling out our panelists now. But before we do that, I'd just like to have one request of everyone. We do have bios here, and when I read the bio, I'd like for everyone to clap after I've called all of the panelists. So I'm going to be reading out each panelist, and then I'd like each panel that I'm going to be reading to make their way to the chair here, so you can choose any chair that you want to sit in. But as I read your name, I would like for you to walk up onto the stage and also occupy your seat. I hope everyone has understood me. I'm going to start with Mr. Bongani. I'm going to start with Mr. Oyama, beg your pardon, Oyama Mabandla. Mr. Oyama Mabandla is a lawyer and businessman. He holds a Juris Doctorate from Columbia University and a BA in Political Science from the University of California, San Diego. He is a regular contributor to the media on intersections of the arts and politics. He is also the author of the book titled Soul of the Nation. That book is also being sold outside, good people, so please do make a purchase when you walk out. The second person I'm going to be reading out is going to be Advocate Muzi Sikakane. Advocate Muzi Sikakane SC is a practicing advocate and senior counsel. Muzi Sikakane SC is also a founder of a group of advocates and named after his childhood mentor, Victoria Mhlenge. The Victoria Mhlenge group of advocates remains part of the Johannesburg Bar. Having been an advocate since 2000, he is now a senior counsel at the Pan-African Bar Association of South Africa, and he has been involved in high-profile constitutional cases. He has gained the status of senior counsel in 2005. His chambers are in Sandton in Johannesburg. The next person is going to be Ms. Papano Pasha. Ms. Papano Pasha is a renowned writer, speaker, opinion maker, scenario planner, and a political and election strategist. With a deep passion for issues affecting the marginalized in the global south, born and raised in Johannesburg, Soweto, Ms. Pasha has made significant impact in the fields of politics, civil society, and economics through her work as the chair of the Center for Alternative Political and Economic Thought. The next person I'm going to be reading out is Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko. Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko is the CEO and founder of Ngezandla Advisory. She is a development economist who joined Stellenbosch Business School in 2017 as a core faculty. In 2021, she was appointed the chairperson of National Empowerment Fund and has recently been appointed to the Presidential BBBEE Advisory Council. She also serves in the Strategic Advisory Committee of the Development Bank of Southern Africa's Infrastructures Fund. The last person I'm going to be reading out is Mr. Jacob Marocha. Mr. Jacob Marocha is a former CEO of Eskom. He holds a BSc Electoral Engineering degree from Wits University. He has completed various executive development programs, including the Advanced Management Program at the Harvard Business School. Mr. Jacob Marocha is a foremost expert on the South African energy industry and a seasoned analyst of international energy developments. His industry experience spans over 35 years, which includes technical, managerial, and executive positions in energy, petrochemical, mining, and property management. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. I'm going to be calling upon now, as I said, I'm a co-facilitator. I'm going to be calling our acting director from the Raymond Mhlaba Center, who is going to be carrying the conversation with our panelists. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Ongama Mtimka, and if I had hidden the fact that I came from Paddy, Umkaya Ubrabong says, just let it out now, that I don't come from Lorraine, actually. I come from about 250 some odd kilometers from here, in Ngusha. We have a singer there, Dumza Maswana, who actually sings and says, Ndizohamba nawe dali wam siye ekhaya eNgqushwa ezantsi eKoloni. It's really a great honor to have this panel. It's a panel of heavyweights. Two things in terms of how we are going to do things. They are really passionate people. I know each one of them, I've seen them speak. They really are amazing. Just the reason, as you've heard from our Executive Dean, Professor Pamela Maseko, as well as Mr. Matomel, it's a knowledge co-construction process. What we're about is what value this adds in the ongoing process of national debate in the country about how we can get things going. So we're going to get started. Two things in terms of, values. One, it's the value of epistemic humility. And what that means is that we know in part. We know and we should be bold about what we know, but humble in the sense that there may be something that is said by someone whom I strongly disagree with, which actually unlocks a thinking in me that helps move the country forward. I said move the country forward even though I'm talking about 5 people sitting in front, because some of us subscribe to that understanding in chaos theory that a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world could generate the initial conditions that causes a tornado in another part of the world. And so there's nothing here that is too small, even though together we are less than 200 people. So I'm not going to give a speech. I'm going to start and put the economist on the spot, Dr. Ntabi Mulego. Paint a picture for us. And I think the mics are right next to you. Paint a picture for us, Dr. Mulego, on the state of affairs of our country economically. Thank you. 3 minutes to do that.
Thank you. A very good afternoon. And I'm going to get straight to it. My opening remarks on the state of the economy is that South Africa, like many African economies, has espoused an economic strategy on the back of a democratic liberation that we got in 1994. The way democracy has been embraced is almost religious. I would say democracy has been the religion that has been embraced by many African liberation movements since the late 1950s, starting with Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah. Democracies have failed to break the colonial bonds of economic entrapment. So what you find is that many economies in Africa continue the management and the extractive use of mineral resources primarily by foreign or international or multinational companies without the participation of the majority of locals. The outcome of that is that the local communities are excluded in the management of the real economy, and the gains of that real economy do not go to the majority of those local communities and the local beneficiaries. Beneficiation, you can talk about it as much as you want. Industrialization, we can talk about it as much as we want. We are discouraged, particularly in the context now of green economy, climate change, etc., to be completely dissuaded and discouraged in breaking the economic and the colonial economic extraction and the colonial ties. So what you're finding is that though you have voted for different economic leaders and different principles, on the main, the economic consolidation remains as was in 1884 Berlin Conference. The deliberations and the consultations of 1884 have remained sacrosanct. The result is that Africa, including South Africa, continues to export much of its minerals out of the coast South Africa exports its platinum, its gold, its diamonds, its iron ore to the West, to Europe, to Asia, and possibly to the Americas, where possible, to the southern part. We continue to be price takers and do not set the price even of our own commodities like OPEC countries who control oil. Africans are price takers and we are not able to fix the price of our own commodities. And the outcome is that black people remain excluded outside of the real economy, with some paltry attempts to include a very few elite beneficiaries. And the result is that I will now highlight what the outcome is, which we all know. Economic activity negative at 0.1 in the last quarter. SMMEs are struggling to maintain their jurisdiction within our economy. Multinationals, oligopolies, all economic sectors in South Africa are concentrated. If you look at the Competition Commission reports, which are very much vehemently opposed by mainstream capital, they specifically talk to every economic sector and they look at the spread and the distribution and the participation of many South Africans, and you find that inequality, we talk about Gini index, South Africa having the highest Gini inequality, you know the Gini index. The index for inequality in turnover of business is even worse than the Gini. So the concentration of the top 3 companies across retail, or the top 5 companies in plastics, or the top 3 or 4 in the different subsectors of the economy are with the big 3 or 4, what we call dominant firms. And so the result is unemployment, unbelievably high. Eastern Cape is one of the provinces with more people looking for work than actually working. Unemployment in 7 of the 9 provinces is sitting at 40% and above. 2 provinces have less than that. Our society faces worsening crime, worsening state of poverty, inequality, murder is normalized, our people are struggling. On the back of that, the cost of living crisis, the energy crises, we can continue on the decline of economic activity and economic output, but until you deal with the fundamental colonial bonds, the lack of access to factors of production, of land, access to capital, and also education and some of the others that we can talk about in the discussion today, we will still see the contracting of our GDP and our gross value add at the negative 0.1. South Africa has seen over the last decade an average growth of around 1.8%. It's contracting. We are sitting now with growth targets in the medium term of 3.2%, next year 1.6, 1.8. This year we're sitting at less than a percentage point. It's shocking. And yet we are mineral rich. Where are we going wrong? It goes back to the foundations and the fundamentals. We're in a bad state.
Where are we going wrong? I think that does deserve a round of applause. So part of what we hold speakers accountable to are ideas that seem not to be based on fact. And I looked and I listened. I couldn't find any from that first input. Thank you so much, Dr. Moleko. Colonial patterns of ownership. Now, when these are said, people assume the grand political narratives. It was explained in exactly what ways does ownership of the economy continue to be like that. Africa price takers, unlike OPEC, concentrated economy, among other things. Ndade Moroka, you've sat at the commanding heights of our economy. And something took you on a journey now. The colleagues in ethics, I'm permitted to say these even though they come from an interview. I did get a permission to say something led you on a journey when you were facing problems, and you say, you discovered something that, wow, back in the days, what we thought was solving for energy was not solving for energy. Please let us in as you comment on what Ntabi said also.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. So Ntabi Singh talked about 1884. Okay. Maybe let me start somewhere next to that date. So Doc says I went on a journey. You know, when I was at ESCOM and in around 2007, 2008, when I had to deal with the issues of ESCOM, I had to go back and say, but you know, ESCOM at that time was about 80 years old. So I asked myself, what similar problems existed in the past 8 years and what can we learn from them? But that journey took me somewhere else. It took me to the political development of South Africa. So I choose the date. Now people can go back and say, you know, 1994, 1948, 1910. But I want to choose a date which is, I think, is profound, and I'll explain why it's profound. 29th October, 1895. So a 25-year-old Cambridge graduate is invited to Kimberley Political and Debating Society. So when he arrives there, the topic is, please talk about the political situation in the Cape. Now, this 25-year-old says the political situation in the Cape is a very small topic. The most important topic to talk about when you look back 25 years and we're looking forward 25 years is the following. And he says two issues. Is the consolidation of the white race in South Africa and the relationship of that white race with the native race. And he spent probably an hour, that 25-year-old, explaining what it means. Now, that 25-year-old grew to become the most important political figure in the next 50 years from 1895. He died in 1950, and his name, Jan Smuts. So he described as a 25-year-old what he sees as the next 25 years of South Africa. He became the most important figure in the Union of South Africa in 1910. He became the most important in the First World War. He became important in the Second World War. He became important, in fact, in the total industrialization of South Africa. Now, in his 1895 speech, when he says there are two problems, consolidation of the white race, and in fact the unity of the white race, and the management of the relationship with the natives. Now, in the context of our topic of the prosperous South Africa, I want to phrase it as such. So what Jan Smuts saw as the big issues in South Africa was the prosperity of white South Africa and the management of the natives. So it's white prosperity and native management which has been the foundation and how this country has been formed. So as we go to 1994, the idea of prosperity prior to 1994 was white prosperity, native management. You'd think that 1994 was therefore the time when we say, can we create a prosperity not only for the 10%, but for the 100%? Now, 30 years now, we can look at and ask the question, did 1994 create a fundamental framework for prosperity of the 100%? Now, and you can answer that question. It's 30 years on. But I want to end my comments with the following in terms of the issue of prosperity. China, the modern China was formed from 1978. China is the second largest economy in the world. When we compare what has happened to South Africa from 1994 to now, in China, the GDP was about 560 billion US dollars. Today, the Chinese economy is $18 trillion. Almost a 30 times expansion of their GDP. They took 800 million out of poverty in that period. They are the second, and it's clear they're going to be the first and the largest economy.
Thank you.
So as we talk, let me just conclude this. As we talk about prosperity, the question is, in 1994, did we develop something profound and something deep to really expand prosperity for the 100% from the 10%? That's for me the most important question of our generation. Thank you.
Please say it again, the question.
So the question is, given the fact that for over 100 years, South Africa was built on white prosperity and native management, that to create prosperity for the 10%, our generational question is, can we have a framework to create prosperity for the 100%?
Okay.
That's really the generational question.
Sure. Thanks a lot. So please, round of applause. So we've started and we are seeing an establishment of a problem. If you could pass the mic to Advocate Sikakane, Senior Counsel, please. So we're emerging with a problem. One, it's been framed in global relations of production first. To say, one, you have an economy in Africa that continues to be owned by the metropole, the former colonial country. And two, that the processes post-independence in the rest of the continent or post-democracy for us have not permitted for the fundamental altering of that. And then you said, as far as domestic is concerned, that there's concentrated ownership, that a few elites own. And you're saying, Mr. Marocha, that there's this big picture, but where it comes from is solving for the prosperity of the 10% and the poverty of the 90. What's your answer to that question, SC? Did we create that framework for a success of the majority since 1994?
No. I think I get invited because I'm the problem child of the South African political debate. Yes, I never know whether I'm invited because I'm part of the solution or the problem.
You are home, by the way.
I am.
They didn't mention that Advocate Kakane SC is our graduate and a former lecturer in this place. So you are at home. Treat it like you ukwamalume.
No, I'm relaxed. I know that the tradition is to acknowledge senior people here. I'm very happy to see young people.
Yes.
I think you must give them a round of applause. Partly because I think they are better than us. Anyway, better than us because the answer I'm going to give you is this. When I said to you no, it's because you can only solve the problem of a country and have prosperity if you can be honest about the problem. What is the problem? Usually we are very cagey about what is the problem. We are cagey because we don't want to offend white people who have money. We don't want to offend classes that are powerful. We don't want to deal with subjects that are painful. We don't want to deal with the fact that why did these kids come in 2 quantum taxis and not in a speed train? We don't want to deal with why all of you woke up in New Brighton and Gwazakele and Motherwell. And so basically the reason I say no, it's because we've not been able to theorize and ask the question, what's the difference between what happened before 1994 and what happened after? And I'm going to start with this because I'm a lawyer and we are told when we critique the Constitution, and I think they mean me. You know, there's nothing wrong with holding different views. And the people who like the Constitution as it is have a right to like it. And those of us who critique bits of it have the same right. In fact, the Constitution grants us the right to critique it as a constitution. And so this idea that when we critique it, we are anti-constitutionalist is narrow. And I think the problem, Dr. Mtimka, for us to analyze, when I said before, is this. Let's start at the basic. Before I go to the psychological aspects of coloniality, the material aspects, the educational aspect, and probably the religious and spiritual aspects, is this. Who was poor before 1994? Who was landless? Who was begging? Who was living in Summerstrand and who was living in New Brighton? Who was owning the key strategic assets of the country, the mines, the banks, and everything else? And who lives on the margins of the human condition? Who comes with a taxi to PE town? And who comes in a snazzy car? And those are basic things. And the reason we are unable to answer that, and the reason our constitution is unable to answer that, is because we are a bit dishonest about theorizing that actually South Africa remains and was a settler colonial economy in which each and every one of us here, black and white, were conditioned to think the way we are thinking now. In order for the 10% that Jacob was talking about to be served by the 90%. That's a product of a conditioning. It's supported by the 90% at their expense, loved by the 10% to be served by the 90%. And until we deal with that, and so when you have a constitution, one of the problems that we heard, Dr. Mtimka, about this, and those who say the constitution is the best constitution in the world, and I think you've seen them, check who says this. Where do they live? Go ask your grandmother in New Brighton whether she lives in a shack because this is the best constitution in the country. This thing is said by people who are comfortable with the status quo, who can live, who have something to eat tonight, and they see the world through the eyes of someone who's content. And so we need to theorize what that is. And the Constitution is an important document. But there are hundreds of constitutions. South African one is just one of them, and you don't have to like it to be a constitutionalist. And so I think, Dr. Mtimka, one of the biggest problems we had, we were in a hurry to set down as a constitution aspirational issues before we could actually liberate. A constitution, in my view, and I differ with so many lawyers on this, is that a constitution can never liberate you. You draft it in order to consolidate what you've won. It means it's a guideline of you having won. And if you want to really check yourself and your politicians, whether you are committed to what we are talking about, you must try every time to look at the world from the perspective of the person who's less fortunate than you. And if we looked at it that way, the Constitution would not be great with 45% of unemployment, with key strategic assets of the country in white hands, with kids, black children, relying on NSFAS to have bare and very poor, bad, colonial, unfree education.
Thank you.
Let me leave it there for now.
Thank you. So, Pakpano, you are going to have the burden of speaking in very concrete terms on two levels. One, so Ntabi advances the idea of concentration of wealth in the South African economy. And I've listened to you pull out the X-files of each of the billionaires and how they rose. Okay. If Ntabi says there's concentration, to what extent is the 10% sharing in the wealth in an egalitarian way with those who have concentrated wealth. That's one, okay? So is it really an issue of white people are continuing to extract? So it's one thing to be rich in assets, it's another to be rich in income in the democratic period, okay? Are they being served by this highly concentrated economy in this way continuously today? And then the second thing that I'd like you to think about is, what, in your view, in the Constitution precisely creates or reproduces this exclusion? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you for the colleagues for setting the tone. I think it's quite unfortunate that, or fortunate perhaps, that we are speaking, this reality, and we are sitting to young people who aspire to have a future or a prosperous future. But unfortunately, the reality is something else. But before I attempt to answer your question, I think as a majority, as much as we can continuously speak of whiteness and problematize the issue of whiteness, we should start to look inwardly, because there is no oppressor who is going to hand over power to you. There is no white person who's going to take the economy and give it back to you, especially if this whiteness has not considered to the fact that they have oppressed us, they have exploited us. It has not happened. Now, we find ourselves in a province where centuries ago, King Hintsa was prepared to lay his life for the land and for his people. Now we are a different generation. We are a generation that has continuously been speaking since 1994, because we do know what is the problem. Ntabi spoke about the economy not having changed since 1884. It is an indictment, and the question again that I think we should ask, if the economy has not changed, if the concentration of wealth is still in the hands of a white minority, why do we call South Africa a democracy? Why do we consider, why is our country and its constitution, that advocate you always speak to, why is it considered the best if it hinders on the aspirations of the black majority? Because you have a constitution that ensures that it protects white minority rights. It continues to ensure that the black majority cannot own the land, to the extent that when you start speaking about the land question, they would say that no, you don't need land. Land is not important. If land is not important, why did they kill, torture, and oppress our forebears? Because if you look at, one can call it the ruling party, the African National Congress, its basis, yes, yes. It's no longer a ruling party, yes. But if you look, well, informally, yeah. If you look at the African National Congress and its formation, its basis was the land question. Now we can sit here and we can speak of semantics, but the reality is that we are no better off than our forebears. In fact, the reality is that we are far worse. I even consider our generation as sophisticated slaves. We speak good English. We stay in, we have been included in all areas, in all avenues, but economically we are still excluded. Now, perhaps to go and answer your question about how the extent to which the elite, the white elite in particular, how they are protected and how they continue to benefit, it's primarily because they own everything which has the power to define. They own the financial service sector. It means that as the black majority, continuously we do not have access to capital injection. Even at, you can look at the private sector, where they own the asset management companies, they own the banks. If you then go to the state, where you would at least expect a state which is led by black people to at least be inclusive, you then pick up that institutions like the PIC, in their main, they serve the interest of the very same asset management companies, because it's these asset management companies and these investment companies that control or that manage the assets of the PIC, which is mainly monies that belong to your parents, that is monies that belong to government employees. But those monies are controlled by a few white people. So you can even go to the legal arena where advocate you find yourself. The big firms which do business with the state, they are also, historically white firms. So you can even go to construction and different levels. You still find that the faces have not changed. Yes, you'll have the CEOs here who are black. You'll have a CEO here is black, but nothing much has changed. So now the question that I ask myself is, when are we, as the black majority, going to start setting the black agenda? Because, as I said, we cannot rely on a minority to set an agenda for us. Colonialism was about a minority presiding over a majority. Now we claim to be a democracy. What are we doing about it? Because no oppressor is going to liberate you, and you're going to be having these discussions, intellectual discussions. You are going to go gray yourself, having the same discussion. But as black people, including white progressives, we need to have an honest discussion if we want a crime-free society. If we want to start having a discussion about black men, not committing gender-based violence and so forth. So prosperity cannot necessarily rely on those who have oppressed and exploited us. We, the people, have to start being our own liberators. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So part of the processes of, engaging in discussions are meant to help us elucidate the precise problems in the way in which they manifest. I'm saddened that in that last part, you started to introduce divergence in what you had initially called a coherent block of white people that is, benefiting from the system. Now you start using this word progressives. Okay. Ntabi, while I'm going to take Utata or Oyamama Bandla, please help us to negotiate this issue, because you see who the object of rage and politicking should be now should not be a question of doubt going forward 30 years into democracy. So I'm going to put a challenge to you that says, you mentioned concentration, and then we saw the history that part of the history of the concentration was to benefit 10%. Okay? Now, what I have not yet been satisfied about is whether there's a part of that 10% that is an us, in the sense that they don't benefit from this elite that Papani is talking about, or, in fact, not at all. That's one. Because remember, the politics of the country are shaping up into something where there's now an emerging union. Okay? So that we need to think clearly about that. Tatu Mabandla, you've written about and you've spoken about our journey since 1994. I want to go back to you and say, as a former liberation fighter who've written about your experience in exile and coming back, how do you read the situation of, are we getting it right in terms of how we are characterizing the problem?
Can you hear me? Charge you a fee. He's my brother. We come a long way. Molweni. I want to strike a discordant note to my fellow panelists. in saying, I do not think that our difficulties, current difficulties, are in a sense a product of our beginning as this, in this democratic odyssey. I do not think that the Constitution is at fault here. I think the Constitution actually provides for a deeper transformation of the society. And what has happened is the executive, because the Constitution is not self-enacting, the executive has betrayed the constitutional promise. Our Constitution is an injunction to economic justice. It's actually there in its founding, provisions, that South Africa is a sovereign, democratic polity that must strive for dignity of its citizens and equality. That's a democratic, that's a constitutional promise. Now, who's supposed to deliver that promise? It's not the Constitution. It's the folks we elect into office. And we must hold those people accountable. And if they are not delivering the promise that we all subscribe to, then we need to kick them out of office, which is what we've just done, in a sense. However, let me say this. And Papano referred to this and said we should be our own liberators. We should wrest back our agency as citizens. Now, if we do not engage as citizens in substantive democracy, I'm not talking about the cameo appearance of going to vote every 5 years, but substantive democracy, engaging as we used to, during our struggle for freedom. We had ward committees, we had street committees. There was ferment. There was participatory democracy. We formed organizations for the kind of issues we're faced with. We formed this organization on the basis of this interest, this organization on the basis of this interest, and ultimately those organizations coalesced, in the powerful birth of what we call the United Democratic Front. He was a member of that. And what happened here is after 1994, we yielded the political space, the political project, to politicians. And by and large, increasingly, the political class was actually getting denuded of talent. It is fair to say the kind of folks who were at the founding of our liberatory journey in Bloemfontein in 1912. If you're talking about Pixika Iseka Seme, you're talking about Khobusa, now you're talking about what's this guy from? Saul Plaatje. You're talking about all those people. These were gray eminences of our people, of our society. Can you say the same now about the current lot? Can we? And if, as I posit, we yielded the political project to the mediocre amongst us, how then do you expect that we're going to have brilliant outcomes? The kind of things that everyone has been talking about here are structural. They need ideation. They need engagement. These are not things that will just fall, on our lap. Lest we forget, we didn't defeat apartheid. We didn't. We fought the apartheid regime to a stalemate. And in the end, we arrived at a settlement. Now, the settlement in itself was not the terminus of our democratic journey, of our struggle. It actually was giving us a new avenue to prosecute the struggle. We had now state power. And with state power, we could pry open other avenues, especially the economic one. And the fact that we have not done that is not the fault of the Constitution. And if I may say, we've had this declining electoral participation. I understand that only 39% of people voted, on May 29th. 39%. 61% of our people essentially stayed at home. Now, there may be some disputation about those numbers, but what is incontestable is that more people stayed at home than voted. Now, that's an index, perhaps, an index of alienation, malaise, you name it. But once we check out of the democratic process, of a democratic project, then we cannot expect that it's supposed to be, it just happens by itself. What does Fanon say about the whole notion of a mission, generational mission? Each generation must discover its mission in order to fulfill or betray it. So when we yield the political project to those we do not hold in high esteem, we are betraying that mission. Our generation, at least, if we may say, engaged in the struggle, we took up arms, we did all kinds of things. In fact, if I may say, all generations. So it is a challenge now to all of us to make this a better republic and not find fault in a text.
Thank you. Thank you. Round of applause. Well, if you have just...
And the text, if I may say, a text that we may change if we want to. We can only do so by political engagement. The political project is indispensable to the success of any nation. Once we yield it to those who are mediocre, we will get mediocre results.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. So if you have just joined us, can you please work with me on this mic, please, gentlemen? And if you've just joined us, you're in the right place. We're at the Raymond Mhlaba Center for Governance and Leadership, where we're discussing this post-election debate. We've got titans gathering here and helping us to negotiate these issues that we've been discussing. Now, I gave them 5 minutes each instead of the 3 that I initially talked about, because I thought that they were, hitting a nerve. So what I'd like us to do is to begin the synthesizing work. One, we acknowledge a big, if I was in politics, I was going to say Nyan Sebenza with this mic.
No, the mic is working. It's the executor who's not. I'd like us to move towards some synthesis after Ntabi helps us with the nature of distribution. Because you see, for me, it's important to get a clarity about benefits to the white society as a whole of this ownership by the concentrated elite. Ntabi?
The reality is that I want to use an example so that we can practically understand what we're talking about here. The legal constructs, I'm not a lawyer. I think there's lawyers around me. You're a lawyer. You have Dean Dundun from all these fancy places. We've got an SC here. They will give the methodology. But I can tell you this, the legal frameworks that our economies have been established upon, and the one fundamental that we cannot run away from, and this is where I differ from my learned Dr. Mabandla, is that the issue of the property rights, we cannot run away from the sunset clauses. I don't know what legal language and Latin terms must be used to expound further. But the fact of the matter is this: in Africa, the sacrosanct thing, you cannot touch property rights anyway. Why? Capital flight. Why? Disinvestment. Why? Credit rating agencies. Yes, this is the context we're operating in. You cannot tell us if we choose the worst. Even if those best want to deal with those structural legal framework of what the rating agency, do you remember what the rating agency said at the back of...
A quick one, Tabi, since I'm giving you, just before we go to the next one, ne? What would you want to do with the, what are we blocked from doing as far as property rights are concerned at the moment? What is it that, for example, as far as nationalizing the ownership of the mines, we've done this. But the businesses themselves, so we've, everything beneath the land belongs to the people of South Africa through the control of their government. We didn't nationalize the businesses though. Are you saying that that's desirable? What is desirable to do that we are failing to do as a result of these property relations?
We have to massify the ownership structures.
Of the operating
production.
entities.
Of the production and the enterprises.
Okay.
We have to massify and deconcentrate. I'll use that term. We have to deconcentrate. You cannot have the bottom 50% of SMMEs in this country having 3% turnover.
Okay.
If you are trying to enter into any of these subsectors of the economy, whether it's mining, manufacturing, whether you want to enter into property, you will have a problem, number one, from the access of capital. Why is it important to have land? You need it for collateral. You need the land as a basic fundamental to gain access to more capital so that you can enter into this productive and real economy. And that is why the question of land ownership is not just a Mickey Mouse question.
Sure.
It actually opens the door of the economy to those who are excluded.
Great. Papano, so let's stick with this idea of land ownership, right? One person can argue, if we need property ownership so that you could allow people to leverage ownership for their own development, Ntabi is talking about in business investment and accessing business finance. So what can we do with what we have now while we're busy with the struggles? So one would argue, why have our government not decided to come up with a regime of titling rural land that's already owned? Because with RDP, for example, they are doing that. A lot, close to 3 million people had settled in urban areas without proper tenure. Ne? Now they come in the urban centers. There have been built houses by government, about 3 million of them. And within 8 years are eligible to get the title deed for that, which then allows them to unlock that land that they own. What stops us as a government or as a people from having more land given title deeds so that people can leverage it? I can understand the politics of wanting to access more, but in terms of why haven't we thought about unlocking that property value that's already low-hanging fruit?
Thanks for the question. I think we need to go back to basics. And the basic is that we need a referendum. Because you said something fundamental, but I do not entirely think it's correct.
Sure.
You had said that the land or the mines have been nationalized.
The minerals.
The minerals have been nationalized, which is not entirely true. And let me make an example with the little town or the city village here in the Eastern Cape, which fought the former Minister of Energy. Because what government says is that what is on top belongs to you, but what is underneath belongs to us. Meaning that the very government can deny you the minerals.
The us, who's the us?
The people.
No, I mean, when they say what is beneath the soil belongs to us, what are they referring to?
No, it belongs to the
state?
people. The people, citizens. So what is on top, let's say you have a house and at some point there are minerals that are discovered underneath.
Yes.
So it means that the house, the property belongs to you, but what is underneath belongs to the state.
Exactly.
And remember that what is underneath, actually belongs to these multinational companies and not the state.
For precision's sake,
Yes.
you are saying what belongs to beneath the ground belongs to the state. Ne? De jure. Now slungisa ke maqwetha. De jure it belongs to the state. What you've explained now about it belonging to mining companies is effect. The mechanism by which that effect takes place is property rights. Sorry, mining rights.
I'm coming there.
Okay. But you remember, we were in an academic space so that we can have precision and stick to, yeah. So please proceed. Did we miss something?
No, thank you so much. Now, when I started, I had said that we needed a referendum. And the reason why I had said that is because whatever we speak to, including the property rights, intellectual rights, and so forth, they are all enshrined within this constitution, and they are all protected by the constitution. But this very constitution is not a constitution by the people and for the people. There was no consultation in 1993 or 1994 on what should be entailed within this constitution.
Okay,
so,
it's a new idea.
Yes.
Let me go to Ntate Advocate SC. Can you help with this conundrum that we're grappling with now?
Yeah, Dr. Mting, we in South Africa, even in academic circles, we tend to have debates along binary lines.
Sure.
If you ask a question, but it's asked in academic terms, but I'm going to answer it in very simplistic terms.
Please.
Because, say, why do people need the land? Others even say they don't know agriculture. What are they going to do with it? Why the ANC has not done this, right?
My only problem is Ntabi has already explained why the land is needed. Remember, we are constructing together.
Sure.
So she's explained that bit. Where I'm at is what is blocking. So I'm trying to find ways in which we can now move. So we've understood the property, the ownership, and how it's important for our economic advancement. Now I'm asking precise questions about the processes of doing it.
Yeah, well, let's do this.
Sure.
First of all, if you want to ask why is land important, what are we going to do with it? Ask the people who took it, killed others, tortured them to steal it. Ask them, why did they take it? Because it's an unfair question to black people to keep asking them, why do you want what you used to own? It's not a very nice thing. But anyway, let me move, because think of anything that's stolen from you, a house, a car. I don't think this question is fair. Even, I was going to come to this. We must also treat academia with a pinch of salt, because knowledge systems themselves were designed for us to accept certain things as they are. So knowledge itself is a component of settler colonial extensions. But anyway, let me come to the Constitution, because read the first line of Section 25, subsection 1. My friend says, and we've been friends because we differ from the trenches, says the text is not a problem. Let's get Section 25, subsection 1, because we must now talk about what must happen. Well, first of all, subsection 1 of the Constitution should not say everyone has the right not to deprive land or property, right? You start at the beginning. You first have a clause that returns what was stolen to those who have nothing. And then you move to how to protect, having created an equitable distribution of land.
Quick one. Are you saying our Constitution at this stage, at this moment, doesn't do that?
Well, let me tell you, see, this is the problem. All of these people who have no land, I've heard you and others say, the Constitution is fine. He says so. It's because you can afford a senior counsel. So No. It's a very serious point.
So our constitution
I can't
doesn't-
afford myself.
Yeah, quick one. A quick one, Mr. Sekakane. A quick one. You
Yeah.
are saying our constitution doesn't say what was stolen must be returned.
So it says you must litigate to get it. So you
No,
need
it
to
doesn't.
No.
It says, our constitution
Right.
says there shall be land reform, land restitution, and what's the third thing which you know?
Give me a chance to finish this point, because we can't agree if you have your own binary and I have my own. I'm not saying yours is wrong. I'm saying these knowledge systems we have themselves, we must critique them. I'm saying to you that the land itself, what you must first guarantee is to correct the distortions, wealth and land distortions of the past. We know who took what from who.
Sure.
And so return it and then say, now that we all have what was stolen. You know, the country was taken, Dr. Mtiga, by 90 people. 90. 89 Dutch men and 9 women in 2 ships. And if you think the Constitution is so above the people, only lawyers should know, no. The Constitution is a document that should actually redress what people know. I don't agree that the text is fine.
Yeah.
I don't agree, Mr. Mabandla, because of this. Just one point. You see, because our knowledge, we don't realize not all constitutions are like this. The Bolivian constitution is different. The Indian constitution is different. In many countries, courts must not wait for litigation. They are what they call, in many countries, constitutional instructions. It means you have your ideological framework first. And the court can say, this GNU is a recycling of an old compromise of a political settlement and therefore goes against national liberation. It's therefore unconstitutional.
Thank you.
I think it's wrong to maintain that the knowledge systems we have in academia are politically and ideologically neutral. In fact, the most educated, we're probably the worst victims of coloniality in how we see the world.
Thank you. So, if you follow the debates, right, we are not surprised as to who is advancing what point. Now here's the thing: academics sat and chose who was going to be in this panel today. So you are in this session today because academics who have the power to mediate who gets to attend what event chose this panel. Thank you. Tatu Moroka. So we are along this process of the precise things that need to be done. Help us.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's on now. I like using country case studies to make points because otherwise we can. So I've mentioned China. One of the question that I'm always asking myself, how does a communist one-party dictatorship increase its economy 32 times? And the money and the investment doesn't come from inside. Any gadget that you use here, 80% chance is made in China. The capitalist wealth is flocking to China to invest in a country that is governed by a totalitarian, communist, one-party state.
Can you please repeat that part? You said the capitalist?
The whole capitalist world flocks to China to invest and grow that economy, which is governed by a one-party totalitarian communist party. Okay? Now, what is the strategic question there? And I don't have the answer, but I'm continuously asking. what is the blockage from us to learn from that experience and multiply our economy 30 times? Now, here is the most important thing, is that a zero-sum game of a diminishing thing, people are going to fight. A abundant sharing of a growing thing, people will be motivated. So if whatever you're going to do, if you're going to take land, if you're going to change the constitution, but who can convince everybody that that act is going to increase the economy by 50 times, and all of us are going to benefit, then we're in the conversation. I think the biggest issue is that, and I go back to asking my question, this elite of China, which for almost 5 decades has increased that economy by almost 50 times. What is their mindset? What are the things that they spend a lot of time thinking about to be able to negotiate? Because they're negotiating with capital from the West. They're negotiating with issues of, credit ratings. They're negotiating with all of those. But I think their negotiation is based on, once they put their compelling vision, everybody sees the benefit and they follow the benefit, because it's not going to be a zero-sum game of a less diminishing cake. It's going to be an abundant sharing of a bigger thing. And I think the challenge to the elite, to South African elite, forget about the constitution, because as long as I can convince people that the act of changing the constitution is going to increase the economy 50 times, everybody will say, okay, let's look at it. But if the act of changing the constitution is, I'm going to lose something, right? No one is going to change it. So what is this abundant thinking that we need to think about? That gives a compelling, abundant future that everybody can sign on.
Thank you. A round of applause again for. So as the rest of the speakers are thinking about 2-minute concluding remarks, I want to come to you, Mr. Mabandla, because 2 things are arising from this last input. One, democracy per se as an issue, because for China to have led that process of whatever they did, it's an authoritarian regime. And by the way, you were saying capital has loved the process in China. Okay, we'll talk about what that is. By the way, if you think about it, the pioneer to do that process is Deng Xiaoping. At the time that Deng Xiaoping started to open up China for capitalists to come and exploit, the people who were allied to Mao, Chairman Mao, including Mao's wife, I'm sorry to refer to her that way, Xin Qing, were people who were critical of Deng Xiaoping. And in fact, it took a lot of imprisoning enemies. Indeed, allegedly, you'll help me explain. It took a lot of imprisoning enemies in order for Deng Xiaoping to lead that process. Is democracy an issue here, Dada? Because we can see that for China it led it, as the speakers think about. No, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah, well, also to be fair to Natemo Rocha, this is me interpreting, because he mentioned 2 things. He mentioned the democracy, and also mentioned that it's creating bigger value for everybody. Yeah, please come to it. I don't think democracy is Can you pass that one?
Here that the constitution is bad.
He just switched off that mic. He switched off the mic before giving it to you.
Oh dear me. Okay. No, I don't think democracy is a problem here. In fact, I'm a big believer that a project that draws from our wisdom, our collective wisdom as a populace, has a better chance of succeeding. I think if we reinvigorate our democratic spirit, we will get better outcomes. We get suboptimal outcomes when we check out of the process. That's what happens. When we're in the struggle, the struggle was a mass enterprise. All of us, in our variegated ways, we got involved with it. And we succeeded. We got our freedom, our democracy, and we decided to go and party. And decided, we're going to let Muzi and all the clever people run our affairs. We must never do that in a democracy. Democracy is about permanent engagement and permanent vigilance. And I do think, Dr. Mtimka, with this initiative of a national dialogue that is being breathed about, we may again have an opportunity to reinvigorate our democratic soul, our democratic spirit, which will help us produce better outcomes for our country, including, if Muzi is right and I'm wrong, there is no reason. There is no reason why we shouldn't change the Constitution. The Constitution is not sacrosanct. But it must be, not because Muzi says so. I think it must be a democratic process. We must engage and say, this section is a fetter to our development. This is what Dr. Mtimka said. He said, tell me something in the Constitution. Show me one clause that has prevented this and that from happening. And I think if we can show that, then let's change the Constitution. Let's change that clause. That is what democracy is about. We have the ability to amend anything in our Constitution that we do not want, as long as we engage the political process, the political project.
Thank you.
It takes 2/3 majority in our parliament to change anything.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So I know I had said as they think about closing remarks, no, we cannot close without coming to your good selves. So we're going to come to you now. They have told us there's a big structure, international structure, which controls everything everywhere. And that Africa are price takers when it comes to the things that we own, different from what OPEC is. Okay, 1. 2, that this was by design in order to advance the interests of white people when it was originally created, and the management of black people. And that took us to 1994. I didn't get what the answer was about distributions, whether white people are together in the crook place, whether they are together sharing equitably from this concentration as they did from way back. That answer didn't come. And then also the issues about what are the paths to creating an inclusive society. 1, it has to do with the decisiveness of sorts. 2, it has to do with creating value. Now, a point that the 3, at least, that are seated in my immediate right, are agreeing on is that some mass participation of sorts is needed. Okay, a referendum, Papano calls it a referendum, that you call it back to basics in terms of mobilization. National dialogue. A national dialogue. The SC says, well, the very legislative framework, the very document needs to actually be we need one that's created by the people themselves and not the elites. That's where we are to the extent that I could summarize. We're coming to you now. We're coming to you. What are your questions? What are your comments? And we're going to be precise. I'll take you, sir, 1. Just in case you have caucused, I'll take 1 for now in that row. 2, 3 at the back. 4 with a Jean. Number 4. Let me take those 4 for now. I'll ask again. Okay. I'll take those 4 for now.
Thanks, Doctor.
Sorry, there's a very brave young lady. You'll be number 5. I'm saying brave because I had already closed and she insisted on speaking. You'll come next time, Dad. Yeah. Please proceed, Mhlaba.
Okay, thanks, Doctor. Mine is specifically directed to Dr. Mhlaba. I just want to find out as to what is the role of South African DFI in terms of frustrating the whole process of making capital available to black entrepreneurs and industrialists, because mostly when I look at the funding model, be it of Land Bank, IDC, National Empowerment Fund, I find that the constraints are just too much, and it's very much difficult for mostly black entrepreneurs to have a loan that really can sustain the whole operation of the business.
Thank you.
So I just want to find out as to what is the role. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You asked the right person in the room, by the way.
No, thanks, and to the panel. Very, I agree. A panel of heavyweights. My name is Busiso. One is on capture. Our politicians captured by capital. In the previous administration, the EFF and the ANC had agreed on passing the motion on expropriation. It's alleged that capital intervened and that's why it collapsed. 2, on GNU, what's our take on GNU? Do we think in this transformative perspective that we are moving towards, was it the best option that the leading party, the ANC, went with the partners that it did? And then what went wrong from the beginning? I mean, since '94, there's a lot of good and positive things that have been done, no doubt about it. But there's a lot of wrong that has done.
Thank you.
Particularly in terms of transformation of the economy, the quality of the education that we provide, amongst others. What went wrong and what should be done? Thanks.
Thank you. The third person was at the back, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doc.
Msa, you can stay there because number four is there. Yeah, please proceed, sir.
Mine is very brief. It's more of a comment with regards to what I think Dr. Eka said with regards to beneficiation. Beneficiation has been a key issue with regards to...
Oh yeah, for the camera.
Yes.
For the people joining us online.
Okay. No, mine is on beneficiation. Because the issue with beneficiation is not starting now. It's a progressing thing that has been coming for a long time. Now, but how do we then beneficiate if you don't control the means of production? Now, this goes back to what we spoke about in terms of land and controlling the minerals. You cannot beneficiate if you don't control anything. Now, you spoke of freedom. Freedom, in part, is not freedom. And by that, I mean, if you don't control the means of production, you cannot say you are free.
Thank you.
Then
last question, please.
Oh, yes. I think one of the major issues that we face as a country is the disunity of black people and the disorganization of our people. If you go to Pretoria, you go to Fort Trekker Monument, you see how the Afrikaner people have documented their history. There's nowhere in this country where you have a history that is properly documented of abantu abamnyama. And I think we need to start there. We need to start have groups that will benefit abantu abamnyama in terms of being organized and unite and have a dream of abantu abamnyama. America has an American dream. We need to have a black dream and stop being apartheid apologist.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Lady with the yellow jersey there.
So my name is Jean, and first of all, I have to acknowledge my whiteness and white privilege, and I'm quite aware of that. So within that white tradition, then, although I think of myself as a white African, but within that tradition, then, I want to refer to the story of Robin Hood. In the original story, you have Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Since 2009, early 2010, we've actually had Robin Hood stealing from the poorest of the poor to themselves. That has been quite difficult to watch. For a long time, wanted to see true upliftment, true sharing of the economy. So that sits somewhere in the conversation and is a bit of an elephant in the room to my mind. Another point that I just want to raise.
Your last one, thank you.
Okay, is that when we talk about land, and that is indeed a very sensitive subject, we must just not forget to also talk about tribal land and the way in which that is managed in a collective sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker for now.
Greetings, everyone. Standing is Lizalise Kyebe, grade 10 from Kwamatlaki High School. I have a question, and my question is, we are stuck and not improving as a country due to the fact that we lack the awareness of that not everything has changed occurring prior 30 years ago. And that is because of the democracy did not change everything, and the only thing that have just made, or everything that has just occurred, was just we only did few touch-ups so that we can only blind Africans and also blind them psychologically and not see that Okay, can I just finish up? And to just blind them and not make them see that this thing only disadvantaged them, not advantaging them, and only advantaging whites than being the South African, and also to grow as South African and to grow as a nation. I'm not sure if I'm clear on that one. Let me just emphasize that. I feel like what just happened is that the democracy, or what we were fighting for, or we lack the awareness that the apartheid did not change. What happened is that we only did, or the white or our leaders only just polished or changed or did some few touch-ups so that they can blind us and try to make them improve more on economically, and not us as Africans.
Thank you. Thank you. Talking about Robin Hood, and I'd like to have a blitz responses, so that I can take one more round with the audience. Talking about Robin Hood, South Africa is ranked by Oxfam not just as the most unequal country in the world, but also as one with the most redistributive tax system in the world, where progressive taxation results in the rich paying up to 45% tax, black or white, and then the poor either not paying tax at all or paying limited tax. And then lastly, I didn't realize this until I went to a country that's trying to grapple with fiscal federalism in South Sudan, to realize that there is a financial genius in South Africa's Division of Revenue Act. We will not see it because most of the questions of why you redistribute money that's made in urban centers so that it also goes to poorer areas, it's not a battle we had to fight. It was done from the beginning, okay, to make sure that Joburg doesn't have the lion's share of the income that's generated from there, but it's distributed to every part of the country. Go to a country I was in South Sudan, where there are fights about to what extent can you take money that is being generated in the oil-rich areas and distribute it equitably to the rest of the country. Anyway, I thought those two facts are important. It seems like you are ready, SC?
Yeah, let me respond to the lady about Robin Hood. I'm going to be very blunt with you because it's a question white people raise to divert the original sin. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think we can educate each other about this. That corruption begets corruption. The Robin Hoods you are saying have been stealing since 94 learned from those who ruled, controlled their knowledge systems before. And
She said 2009.
Oh, 2000. But I'm saying I think it's the post-apartheid. Corruption has been our plague in post-apartheid South Africa, right? But it's not starting there. And I'm raising this because this debate, and it's not why you are saying it, but sometimes there's a diversion by the white minority to talk about corruption of a councillor as if that's the original problem. The original problem is that South African politicians, and all of us here, think the way we think because we are a product of knowledge systems that are corrupt, that tell us that there's a section that is inferior. And what I think it does is that we are a sick people that psychologically are a product we are birthed by a corrupt system, and we've learned from it. And instead, the little girl there says, what happened in 94 is the grand theft, actually, because it was, a pig wearing lipstick remains a pig. What we did was to take a pig and we put lipstick on it. And nothing much has changed. And I don't talk about white people, I talk about whiteness. Whiteness has no color. It's a system that has reproduced itself, and it has black agents, some of whom are corrupt, some of whom believe in the knowledge systems that promote that. So you're right. The next question about our politicians captured. I know that there are people who like the dialogue and what's going to happen. There's nothing wrong with the dialogue. People are captured because someone captured knowledge systems and history, how we think. If you control how people think, you will control 200 years from then. So we are all captured for that reason. And I think we must get out of this psychologically. I don't promote this national dialogue because I think it's a recycling of what happened in 94. I think we need a mass-based discussion by ordinary South Africans, not people and foundations that were part of the problem trying to clean it and promote it. We need a system where ordinary South Africans, academics like Dr. Mtika, Masego, and others, to lead us in a proper discussion, not to lull our people into some kind of false dialogue, but a real discussion about how do they get out of this misery. And until we have that, this national dialogue thing itself is about, yet again, because the lipstick on the pig is wearing off, we're putting another.
By the way, SC, when you close later on, somebody online on YouTube is asking, does government give you any more work? If not, what can be the reason?
Well, I just need to jump in here. I mean, the national dialogue is going to be citizen-driven enterprise. I think that's what the foundation said, Muzi. National foundations issued a call on the 27th of June. All of them. Biko Foundation, Sobukwe Foundation, Tutu Foundation, Mbeki Foundation, Lutuli Foundation, all of them. They issued that call that says, this call will be citizens-led and it will be devolved to the voting district. A bottoms-up process, which will implicate what Moses is talking about. That it is not a bunch of people who've been corrupted by academia, telling South Africans what they should want. Citizens. Just like we did with the Freedom Charter. It must come from the bottom up. And then at the national convention level, all representative groups, academia, think tanks, traditional leaders, traditional healers, the arts and culture communities, sports communities, faith communities, all of them will meet in this grand conclave that will propound a national plan, which will then be sent to Parliament.
and hopefully inform all manner of behaviors, custom, legislation, including the much hated constitution by Muzi.
Thank you.
This will come from the people.
Thank you. By the
And
way,
I don't know why Muzi is scared of that. You know?
By the way, two comments are scathing at me there online that I'm interrupting the speakers, and in fact, I was asked. The only challenge is that I have to manage that each person has a voice. Papana?
No, thank you. I would like to specifically respond to your question on whether our politicians are captured. And I think the question goes back to your response when you speak of the Freedom Charter. Our politicians were not only captured in 1994 and post-1994. In fact, to legitimize the capture of our black leaders, it was mainly a clip down through the Freedom Charter. It was mainly white liberals in particular who captured the ANC and other liberation movements to the extent that today, if you look at our democracy, there are not more than 5 families who control our democracy and political parties through party funding. So that is where you get real capture. And when you speak of national dialogue, it's not true that it's going to be people's-led, because it's going to be the same elite who would want to control the narrative so that you and me believe that we are in a democracy, that we are in control of our future, when it is not true. They just want to cement the interest of white capital. And these are the discussions that we need to have. Because if we need to speak about real decoloniality, we need to unpack what is colonial and what is decoloniality, who is poor and who is rich in our country and wealthy. So I think your question, it is very succinct, because when we speak of a parliament and a democracy, we speak again to sophisticated slavery and colonialism, because every 5 years we legitimize white interest to continue benefiting and solidifying white interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with the question on why are we not able to improve as a country that Lisa asked, and also the comment on the disunity and the disorganization of black people. I think the two are symptomatic of each other. The reason why is because if you look at the country that Babu Marokho has been talking to us about, the Chinese have a 400-year plan. Do you know that? 400-year plan. The AU, which is the African Union, which has the 50-year plan up to 2063 for Africa's development, it's a mere 50-year plan. The South African government has had what they call the National Development Plan, which is supposed to be effective. That's the longest economic strategy or plan that we have in the next culmination 6 years. We barely have a 10-year plan. 10-year plan. We barely have a 30-year vision that can collate what we would like to see as South Africans, and we think we're going to come out. Where there is lack of vision, the people perish. We're perishing now because we don't have a long-term plan. You don't only need a plan, you must execute it, but at least have a plan. Have a plan. What should that plan have? We spoke about the issue of beneficiation at the back and the comment of disorganization. If black people in all political spectrums can agree we must industrialize, for an example. We must make these benches. Look at all this wood here. We must make these chairs. We must make these cell phones. We must make videos. Whatever it is, the clothes we're wearing. If we can just agree, all of us, and say, let's industrialize. Let's produce what we consume. We consume, we go to Spar every day or shopping there at Pick and Pay and Woolworths and whoever can afford Woolworths these days. But if you can, we are consuming, but are we producing anything that we are consuming? Is there a mindset in our schooling that says that Africans need to begin, even in universities, we must have a change in the school of thought that says we must become the manufacturer. The reason why my company is called Ngezandla is because I believe we must use our hands to develop, to grow, to nourish, to make something from a primary good and beneficiate it into something that is more value added. How do we do that? You put laws in place that prevent export of primary raw materials. Simple.
Quick one.
No, don't stop me. I'm going to be those audience. I want to finish my point, Ongam.
A quick
because
one,
you
Tabi.
to me before.
I want to remind you.
I want to remind you, so it's related to the point you are on. I want to remind you, because the question about DFIs.
I'm coming
that's
there.
Capital. Yeah.
I'm coming there.
Yeah, please go there, because we're running
I'm
out of
coming
time.
there. I'm going there. We've got to restrict the export of unprocessed goods. We can do that. That if you export these things unprocessed and go, because the fight about these SOEs, let's be honest, we haven't spoken today about SOEs. These SOEs have been set up to quickly make sure that everything that is beneficial to us and of value to us quickly gets out of here. How fast can Transnet get our things out of here? How fast can these ports get our things out of here? How fast can all of our minerals go somewhere? Our coal, let's not even talk the green economy question. Our coal, which is supposedly dirty. Someone in India, in Pakistan, in Germany, in Europe, they are all using this dirty coal except us. Okay, let me go to the DFI. Let me go to the DFI. DFIs are there to be the missing middle of finance. I must openly disclose here, I'm the chairman of the National Empowerment Fund. The National Empowerment Fund has been established by the DTIC to finance black business. The DTIC stopped funding us in 2010. I'm saying this now openly. Yes, we don't get allocation from the state. We collect our earnings and our revenue from the black businesses, which we know don't have collateral, which we know are dealing in concentrated economic sectors, which we know the turnover and the success is likely to fail because this is the nature of firms. We basically run on the back of a balance sheet that is not capitalized, and we must finance all of black business. NEF is not funded by the state for the last 15 years. And we are supposed to allocate capital to all black, underserviced, unfunded from the financial sector populace, which we do. We've disbursed now 14.2 billion to over, I won't know, 1,700. I've got numbers in my head. Let me not go to the numbers. I'm not here to give PR for the NEF. But the failure of the financial sector to reform and transform adequately is that you don't have enough capitalization of the DFI like the NEF. The balance sheet of the NEF, if it can be not just quadrupled, but expanded to almost 100 billion, to finance entities that will have a sizable impact in the various economic sectors. The IDC does not necessarily target black-owned business. It targets industry.
Thank you.
So the land bank also has constraints. But if you look at the apartheid apparatus, they understood the nature of the financial sector and the importance of it. They had cooperacies that didn't pay back the monies before 94, by the way. All of that balance sheet was consolidated. I'm not going to the finance of that. But we now, on the back of the new post-1994 dispensation, started on a clean slate where you must now borrow, pay everything back, but you cannot capitalize if you're not collateralized. You don't go to the IDC with 10% equity. If you want 100 million, you must have 10 million. If you want 200, you must, who has 20 million sitting in their bank account? Come on.
Thank you.
So I'm saying the DFI, particularly the NEF, has been on the sideline. We do not have the capital to heavily inject into black business because we were designed like that.
Sure. Thank you. So if time, yes, please, thank you. If time permitted, Ntabi, I was gonna ask you, and maybe you can squeeze this in your closing remarks, right? So you're raising a supply side issue in terms of capitalization of the DFIs. For over 10 years, I worked with black businesses that had great ideas. They would not be funded at the time that, so it would be interesting how much money is held by the sector itself from national to provincial levels, because they just don't give money. Then you've got, because remember there's DFIs, and then there are financiers that are in the state For example, in the Eastern Cape, we have Iskalo, we used to have Mhlaba that moved from government to all of them. The same story is that people are not accessing the money. Worse of it is that during the COVID, government government created a financial instrument to help them. I knew when they announced that they were going to do it, that it's not going to get to people. So on one level, you've got a financial access to money to land issue. On another, you have a logic of the DFI sector that operates the same way as banks do. Anyway, maybe when you close, you can. So I don't want the DFIs to scapegoat government, when in fact their logics are based on the same principles that by the private sector operates in.
Yeah, look, not a specific answer to a specific question, but a general principle. And Tabi talked about where there's no vision, the people perish. And there's a saying that whatever the problem, the answer is leadership.
Okay.
And I just want to give a practical example. We are 4 months without load shedding. Right? And if you go back this time, maybe last year, the issue was that we're going to be in the dark forever unless we do something. Now, the people have asked the new leadership of Eskom, what did you do? People are expected answering all of the issues. I mean, for the past, say, 5 years, the issue was corruption, old coal, lack of funding. But when the leaders of Eskom are answering now, the summary of the issue is that we have raised the expectations of the people of Eskom. Right? It is not the leaders that are fixing the problem with technical solution. It's believing that the people who have been running these plants can come forth and do what is necessary to fix the lights, and the lights are fixed. Now, in South Africa, we can talk about all these multiple problems, but unless we have the leaders that raises our expectation, and once more, raises our expectation of we can create a bigger, better, abundant country. That solves all of the problems, not only cut them into pieces, but create a bigger one. For me, the issue again goes back to whatever the problem, the answer is leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, please, round of applause. We're going to do what is called a blitz. I used to play chess, so when you play a 30 seconds or a 1 minute game, 30 seconds, hit to the question, no prelude, no introduction, hit to the question straight. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can take more because it's going to be 30 seconds, right? And 6, 7, 8. This is ambitious. That's it. So sorry. We unless now I'm going to look at my boss. Hold on a second. Okay. I was going to see if I can negotiate the time for you, but we can't. Okay. So blitz. If I was interrupting earlier, I'm going to be more interrupting now. Thank you. Proceed, sir.
Thank you.
Online.
All right. Why? Okay, my thoughts are all over the place. If the constitution is progressive as we are to accept it, or the best constitution, why is it celebrated on both sides? White people are happy about the constitution, black people are happy about it. But it was black people who were oppressed, and the constitution was supposed to be an answer to the oppression.
Thank you. Got you. Thank you. Why is it celebrated on both sides? I did acknowledge the hand, so work with me, please. There was one in the middle, but, oh yeah.
Your number? Who's number 3?
Greetings, everyone. Standing in front of you is Asanati Mabelo from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm in grade 10. Firstly, yes, we have acknowledged the problems. My question is, how would our economy be improved, or what are steps to be taken to solve or improve our economy? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Number 3 is at the back, and then we come this side. Okay, you'll be number 4, Perry, then I come here.
Okay, my name is Bongani. I'm a lecturer in the software engineering department. So the panel has unpacked all these problems. My question is simple. I mean, Bao Mabandla has mentioned how we've given power to the politicians. Umam Pache has mentioned how these people are captured.
Masembuzo and Bongs.
Yeah, so the problem lies, Tatu Jacob mentioned that the problem lies basically with leadership. So my question is, what is the actual solution? What is the problem? How do we get through to the leadership? Excellent. Can these people get us to where we want to be? For instance, he mentioned how in China...
We got it. We got the question. Thanks a lot. Perry? Thank you, Bongs. Perry?
Thanks, Dr. Mtinka. I've got just 2 questions, and I'm going to use the 30 seconds. The first, oh, sorry, I must set to stand. The first question I want to ask is, why are we not forced to speak Sikosa here? Firstly.
Second one?
No, whether it's Xhosa, isiZulu, but we are in the Eastern Cape, let's for argument's sake, why are we not speaking Xhosa? When we're in Mafike, we speak Setswana, right? But we are speaking English. But when I'm outside there by Sigidi, for example, or wherever, we are speaking Xhosa. But when we are sitting at university, we are speaking English. The second point that actually I'm a bit disappointed with, and it's not the panel, it's the narrative around decoloniality that is void of a critique of capitalism. Okay. So we are talking about the minutiae of the capitalist system. We're talking about massifying black people
thank you, Barry.
Into sectors, but we used to talk about socializing those sectors. But I want to just, the last point in relation to that second point was colonialism emerged hand in glove with the capitalist system. They are bonded together. And it's for that reason that if you go to the favelas in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, it's black people that are the underclasses. If you go to Australia, settler colonial economies, it's only in South Africa there were too many of us. They couldn't commit genocide and get rid of all of us like they did the Aborigines in Australia,
thank you,
etc. So
thank you, Barry.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Snomulelo, and quick blitz questions. Mr. Marojo, I just want to kindly ask you, how do we invigorate the psyche of young people in our society so that we participate in this democracy? Sorry, Mabandla, sorry, sir. And then I'd like Mr. Advocate Sikhaban, sorry, sir, Sikhakan.
Forgiven.
I do apologize. I just want to kindly ask, how do we, you speak very robustly, and I think that a lot of young people, we can relate to your arguments, but how do we robustly engage with these problems while also promoting social cohesion? And
Thank
then,
you.
Mrs. Pasha, could I just kindly ask you, how do we develop 10-year, 20-year future plans when there's so much economic instability, not just looking at domestically and our own issues as South Africa, but even when we look at the international setting, we have high interest rates, there's a risk of recession. We just saw the Nikkei tanking recently on Monday. So how do we develop these plans?
Thank you.
And last question.
Mr.
Maband,
I have to take 3 more people, and we have to be done by 6 o'clock. So please pardon me, colleagues. It's either more people get to speak and there's responses, or we run out of time.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Clinique Mai. I come from Utnig High School, and my question is: how does the new growth path aim to create jobs and stimulate economic growth?
Thank you. What a good example. Thank you for that. Okay.
Evening, Betuna. Kamalam Denguzukhanya Makepe from Kwamaklaki High. And my question, which is not a really question, why should we bother the fact that we were oppressed by the whites? And Dr. Mtika, You are protecting it like the way you spoke today. Miss Pasha was speaking facts, and then you were harsh to her, stopping her from speaking. But my question from you is, do you think the whites did the right thing by oppressing us?
Thank you. Okay. Fireworks there. Thank you. Thank you. You said your name was again? Zukanye. Thank you.
Hello. My question is based to Ms. Pasha.
And that's the last, by the way. This is the last speaker. Did I acknowledge? Okay, proceed.
Since Ms. Tabeseng talked about the 10-year plan, I wanted to ask you Ms. Pasha, are we productive than the whites, and in which way? Sorry, but it's based to you.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Are we productive than the whites, and in which way?
Okay.
If our mind is still captured on the 1994.
Okay.
You
Okay.
understand?
Okay, Ngosim Dagwet. And then that will be last, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doc. My question is to Dr. Ntabi and SC Skakani. So I do understand that not to take or add anything away from the land question, but why is there nothing that's being said about the theft of cattle that happened in the African continent? Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker. Thank you. Good example.
National dialogue, Comrade Oyam. I'm not too sure how this thing we hope for it to work. Because the very same people you mentioned, the one that you didn't mention was Ahmed Katrada. Because all of these guys, all of them, they are being funded somewhere. So the narrative that is going to be led, because it's them that are supposed to be leading this national dialogue. Papan, we did the land reform referendum. It was led by the government. They went to all provinces. What did we get out of that? Zish.
Thank you.
My take is that the referendum that needs to come is the type of referendum that Papan was talking about. It must come from the bottom. It can't come from these people that are funded by
Thank you. Zukanye, kandi xolele. Simanage ixesha kaloku. Sorry to everybody who's offended. I did offend, okay? And the reality is that we had this much time. We have a panel of great speakers. Each one of them, we profiled them, and we know what they say. It never lost any of us. And the choice was, these are the people that should be here. And that talks to the humility that we all should have to subject ourselves to a process of ideas being confronted. And indeed, the issue of the academy and how it is captured, yes, absolutely. But all democracies the systems of democracy are systems of capture. So what do? We negotiate the tensions through our agency so that in the final analysis, through the process of difference and knowledge construction, we're able to reach that thing that is greater than the constitutive parts. So the idea that's going to come from here is greater than the individual positions of each of the speakers. Okay, so Blitz, a minute to either respond to a question or to make closing remarks. Let me start with you, Ntate Mroga. Start from the far right.
The brutal question is that in crafting a path from here, we are on our own. And in negotiating all of these tensions and all of this contradiction, it has to be us defining clearly where we want to be and integrating everything towards that goal. No amount of grievance, even if those aggrievers agree, are going to give us the kind of bright future we desire. And I think for the young people is that it is going to be how you participate in forming the future of this country that is going to make a difference, not necessarily articulating the same grievances in better terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Ntabi?
Thank you so much. I'm going to be very quick. You asked me a question around the financiers. Do they operate as banks? Somewhat, I would say, because the trappings of wanting collateral, the requirements of owner's equity, all of these other things that you normally see in banks, you find. Can you maybe give me that one?
Baksabenza.
The trappings that you see in the financial sector are some of the trappings that you see within the DFIs. I don't necessarily agree that access to equity is being dispersed sufficiently to some of the DFIs that are exclusively mandated to deal with marginalized and the excluded. I think on the aspect of what should be done, Mabelo asked together with Zukanye on what steps to solve the economic problem. Have a plan. Have an economic strategy. There are a multiplicity of economic thought. I wrote something called New Wine into New Wine Skin together with other young people and economists around what needs to be done so that you can transform South Africa's economic trajectory out of this underdevelopment, low growth trap and so forth. Don't listen to us here and think we just complain. We actually have written solutions. We've put in place papers to say what can be done. I think the other narrative that Barry is asking on the decolonization and the critique of colonialism, I think that the theory and the thought, the critical thought that needs to happen, I would say it has to happen in a very constructive way. It's not sufficient for us to just complain and quell here. We have to take it to schools. We have to take it to universities. We have to take it to the courses you do on political economy. You have to bring different thinkers. Some of the people here need to teach. I teach at Stellenbosch. You can see when they walk out of the class, they read. They don't like me. They complain about it. They go to that diary. I say, it's fine. I teach perspectives on African Friday. I don't have time to be nice because I'm trying to change the mindset of many of the people that go to Stellenbosch to show them that what has happened historically is not correct. And what needs to be done going forward has to be transformed. But for that, you're not popular. And you don't have to be popular. So I think leadership, and I think going back to the point that Jacob made, you have to be willing to be unpopular. We have leaders that want to be popular, that want to receive applause at the expense of the country, at the expense of the society. So you have to reach a point where people don't like you and you're fine. Those are the leaders we need. I'm not saying they must kill people and put people in prison like they did in totalitarian states. No. But I say we must protect our human rights in South Africa and protect life. But we have to have leaders that put African people, the poor, the people in the rural areas first before their own stomachs. Until we have those leaders, it doesn't matter who you elect. You can elect all these people you want in all these different formats and structures, but if they're not servant-hearted, if they don't care about the people, if they're not interested in creating value for all, you will remain with the underdevelopment. And these capitalists that continue to finance them will put them at the forefront in this democratic dispensation, but you'll continue to suffer. So we have to change the leaders.
Thank you. Zukanye got me. I had wanted to come in, but I thought about Zukanye there.
I just would first like to start with the question that was posed by the young man. I think it's one of the most profound and historical questions on productivity between, in fact, the question that he asked, are black people more productive than white people? That question is very succinct and very important because if we were not productive, they would not have kidnapped our ancestors from the African continent to go and build Europe and America. They would not have exploited, oppressed, and enslaved our forebears to build the infrastructure that you see today. So yes, blacks are extremely productive. And they continuously ensure that they keep our mind in a state of capture so that we fight amongst ourselves. You must look at the issues that we debate on. The borders, which is okay. We debate the borders, we kill each other. We do not have time to speak to each other about the solutions on what needs to be done. And we sit here, for example, and speak about China just on the issue of leadership and values. The white world allows China to be a one-party state. And they come here to Africa and they tell us about democracy. Now you should see the unfairness, the treachery of the Western society and the values that they impose on our continent. So in closing, and Julius Nyerere said it so well in 1961, that the white world will never allow us to unite. There's a second scramble for Africa. And in the main, it's about our mind and colonizing our mind and ensuring that we continuously fight amongst each other and our leaders are perpetually captured. Now, perhaps it's time that amongst yourself, especially young people, that you start to determine your own agenda, you meet, so that you start to determine your future and the direction that this country has to take. You can no longer rely on politicians. Thank you so much.
If time allowed us, there's a video where Papano talks about the early African influences on education in Western Europe. I found that to be quite interesting. Thank you. Essie?
Thank you. Perry, at least because we are friends, I think people are going to suspect we both socialists. I am. Because we don't talk about capitalism, because we don't want to offend white capital and global capital. That's the capture of our minds. Because we're trying to debate, we are a pathetic lot. Someone talked about black unity. We are a pathetic lot sometimes. We can't even agree that we are in pain, that we are poor, that our people are starving. We are sitting here pontificating about different things. I usually take this insult that young people associate with you. It's not an insult to me. I actually prefer that because I think they are less victims of colonial minds. They are better than us. We're trying to speak about the problem in a manner so that we can please the very people who don't like us. Because our knowledge systems vary about language. If your language is not the language of power, of the economy, you will never catch up with the world and the discourse, and it's deliberate. And so one of the things we need to do, Ongama, going forward, we have to go back and recreate this state as a sovereign state. We have to start all over with a constitution. You know, this idea that there are some of us, because we critique the constitution, we hate it, is a mechanism of silencing debate. Because we don't hate it. We just don't like certain aspects, because national liberation must be at the center of a document in a country that seeks to alleviate poor lives of African natives. We shouldn't be ashamed of it, and we shouldn't try to speak in sophisticated ways to appease intellectuals. It's poverty, it's death we're talking about. And so, what we need for a sovereign state, Dr. Ongama, and by the way, I'm happy with the robust debate from you, because I think to create a new state, we must first do away with all of these questions about foundations, Mr. Oyama. You must go and see who funds those foundations. And you will see who wants to determine our future again. Your foundations. Yeah. And secondly, in order to create something else, we have to be honest. We have to be truly, truly honest with ourselves. We've actually forsaken our people while we pontificate like this. We have to start all over, have a proper discussions about the new state, create a constitution whose emphasis, whose thrust is the liberation of African masses subjugated by capitalist patterns of ownership that have nothing, own nothing, have died. Poverty is violent. Try and sleep outside tonight without a blanket and see what it's like. And so this pontification, this attempt to try and sound sophisticated about people's lives is itself a product of captured minds in order to promote and ensure the continued survival of white power over us. You create a state in which you talked about SOEs. We must create a state where in the constitution, the strategic assets of the state are controlled by the state so that you can redistribute. You must create a security system that protects people who've been brutalized, all of them. You must create a health system in which it is fashionable and normal that everybody must have access to free, basic free health. You must create an education system that is the antithesis of what has produced us here and what we think. We must overturn our knowledge systems. This whole attitude we have here is a product of how colonized we are, the way we think, the way we critique, we question. The reason I always say as a lawyer, we can't even agree about the Constitution and human rights, it's because actually we all don't agree about who's human. We do not agree about who's human. The reason we are differing here, because most of us, if not all, we have a hierarchy of humanity in our minds. Even those, and I'll answer the question last, why do both sides celebrate the Constitution? It's not true. It's the voices you hear that want to maintain it. They've not asked Mama was a mother well, whether it's nice to live in a shack and the Constitution is successful. They ask the very same people that created it. They coined this phrase, this is the best Constitution in the world. Next time you hear someone say that, ask them to go live in a shack in Motherwell and ask them the following day whether we live in a country with the best Constitution in the world. So we need to create those foundations. And though, what do I think must happen this year and next year? I think we must start doing away with the state architecture as it is now and create a socialist-based arrangement in which everybody has a better chance in life. We must have a dialogue, not this dialogue where the elites are trying to control the narrative. We must have a dialogue about the Constitution, the fundamentals of this country, and create what I call a new republic, a new state based on the ability and honesty to confront the fact that 90% cannot live in poverty forever. No one is free until all of us are free. By the way,
do you want a revolution?
I just want, yes, I do. I actually think a revolution is what I'm calling for. And I think, by the way, let me just close with a quote from Nietzsche, because I know some of you are comfortable with what I'm saying. But I like young people, although it's an insult that young people understand me. I like it. It's an insult by people who think they are sophisticated. But anyway, Nietzsche tells us this very early in the 18th century.
As we conclude.
As I conclude. Unless you have chaos inside you, you can never give birth to a dancing star.
That's my brother, Muzi. And there's a reason why on the left here. Muzi, sorry, Bandago Siabulela, this is about you. This is your event. As Muzi has kept on saying, we look to you for the future of this country. You are the largest cohort. The future belongs to you. We've done what we could, and perhaps imperfectly. And the whole idea now is for you to seize your agency and take this country further than we are currently. So I agree with Muzi on that. We need a new politics in this country. We need a new state. We need a new empathic civilization. Muzi, you haven't read my book. That's what I say, actually. You know, if he had, he wouldn't be attacking me. You know, we need a new education. We need a new educational system. We need new ideation. You see, Ndadema Rucha has insistently kept on talking about vision and ideas and ideation as a wellspring for the success of nations. I mean, he's used China. He's used China, and he's right. You know, China is a success story, but China is a dictatorship. We are not. So we have to find our own ways of fashioning our own future. We don't have to be told this to anybody. And that is why I say that future can only be crafted by us through a national dialogue. How it takes form, we may all differ. But the answers must come from the populace, not from Muzi, not from me. They must come from you, and especially young people. So this is your future, and this country has always been authored by young people. Whether you're talking about the people who took over the ANC in 1944, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Tambo, Apimda, Lembede, and them, and transformed the nature of the ANC. Whether you're talking about the students who took after the Mhlaba, the catastrophe of Rivonia, when our people are beginning to give up on themselves, Steve Biko and his cohort led a new birth of freedom through the Black Consciousness Movement. And it is a Black Consciousness Movement that infused us with pride to take on the might of the state in 1976, because we believed in ourselves. And I can go on and on. The generation that led to the freedom of this country, what is called Osianyongo, it's always been young people at the fore. And this is, in a sense, a challenge to you to take up your rightful place and lead this country. And you can only do so by seizing back your agency and take over the political project from all of us dinosaurs here like Muzi. Thank you.
Thank you. I did try to make sure that we close with the room still full. Here, what's good about a revolution? It gives you an outlet for your anger, and you burn everything down, and you feel great about it. You do. You know, when you give your rage and express it, it's nice. It's self-gratifying. Ask the people of Mozambique and South Sudan and Angola what they think about rebuilding after a revolution. Thank you for your time. Thank you. But there's somebody who is designated to come and do the vote of thanks, and that is Professor Nsekela Breakfast. Thank you.
I feel I'm offended that before I speak, people are walking out of the venue. I'm telling you. First of all, let me acknowledge the presence of my boss, Professor Maseko. I see you, madam. Secondly, Dr. Mtimka asked me at short notice to make a summation of all the wonderful speeches. And if I had time, I would embed them in the work of Foucault, Michel Foucault, who foregrounded the theory of discourse analysis. Because Foucault provides a radical epistemological explanation of the production of knowledge, because our understanding of realities is a result of what is reported to us by the media. And our relationship with the media is a relationship of power. Therefore, I don't think that we have done justice in terms of exhausting some of the concepts like constitutionalism, like the GNU. For instance, you know, there are 5 countries on a global scale that don't have constitutions. England doesn't have a constitution. Israel doesn't have a constitution. Northern Ireland doesn't have a constitution. But then we are made to believe that a country has to have a constitution in order for it to be democratic, which is a flawed argument. We need to examine the intellectual history. Where does the concept of constitutionalism come from? The concept of constitutionalism rose to prominence against the background of what had happened in Germany. It's a German construct. That's the background. So in order to prevent the abuse of human rights, it had to be introduced. But other countries, they have parliamentary sovereignty. Therefore, I'm arguing, we have not exhausted the debate. The second point is with regard to the issue of GNU. Again, the concept doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere. Someone came from nowhere, introduced the concept, we accepted it uncritically, then ran with it. It's wrong. What is the role of public intellectuals? Is to question power. We need to question the metrics of power. Where does power reside to? So I think that we need to do that in taking the debate forward. I don't want to belabor the point. On behalf of myself, on behalf of the faculty, we want to thank our guests, we thank the audience, and may everything go well with you. Thank you very much.
Please hold on just a second.
Pardon me, there are books on sale. One